but we're here now, and hi everybody. So thank you all so much, and I'm sure people will trickle in as we get going. I've got a lot. Hey everybody on Instagram, I see a bunch coming in.
Yeah, same here.
So thank you all so much for being here. We are super excited to celebrate issue 3 coming out. It came out on Wednesday, and then we couldn't do our normal Q&A live
There's
sketch
David's cover. Yeah.
because we were doing a signing in New York, and we had an awesome time there, signing and meeting people. We met a lot of people from the fan group, which was super fun. Everybody kind of came up and told. It was neat to see put faces to the names I've seen, over the years on the comments and things. So that was super fun, and everybody was super nice. I mean, we had such a great time, and we had a fun time running around the city too. And Zach took me to this killer ramen place, and we had a great time. We had some...
Just to interject, Jared. If anyone
asks
me, I'm a New Yorker. Like, everyone don't at me, but I don't like pizza. I'm like the one New Yorker in the world who probably does not like pizza. But I love
you're gonna
ramen.
get a shutdown immediately.
Yeah, I'm just gonna get a shutdown. I'm gonna get reported. But I know all the good ramen restaurants.
When I was in New York in, when was that, October?
Mm-hmm.
There was a ramen restaurant just up the street, and it was like Michelin rated.
Oh, wow.
Was it Caputo or was it Ichiran? I'm trying to remember where you stayed.
I remember.
Yeah.
It was around the Broadway area where all the theaters were.
Okay, yeah, there's some in like that area in Hell's Kitchen. Yeah. There's like a few Michelin star ramen places.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
We ate there twice.
There you go. And just to also continue the chat, we have, Stan here. Thank you, Stan, for being here on Friday. And we have David Peterson here joining us because he, is a fan, but also did the issue 3 variant cover. And, we asked David if he would join us, and he gladly gave us his Friday afternoon, evening. I don't know where you're located, David, but
it's
I appreciate you being here.
I'm East Coast time.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
You got, I don't know if it's on the picking up in the stream, but I think one of the mics is buzzing a little bit. I'm not sure which one, but
yeah, I don't know if it's mine.
Hopefully that's not too much in the feed. But anyways, we wanted to show everybody a couple cool things. This was something that we had people that came to the signing and gave us art, some paintings that people had done, which was super cool. Somebody gave me a Yukichi painting, and knowing that because I've talked about how I really like Yukichi, so that was really fun. We got some cool art, and someone made this super cool thing. Check out this.
Yeah, it is neat.
It is so good. It's so neat. It's like you can move his he articulates a little bit.
Wow. So it's 3D printed?
So he sculpts.
It's amazing.
Yeah, he sculpts it in a program, and then he 3D prints the pieces, but then he meticulously assembled it for us to check out and see. So his whole, he can move around a little bit. I just am afraid of hurting it.
He was he actually, both of us had reposted. He had done a mock-up design on Instagram, and we both were like, oh my god, this mock-up's so great, like, thank you for like making this. And he's New York City based, and he's on Instagram at Manuel_C_artist. I'll be sure to share it afterwards. And he came by to the signing, and he's like, guys, look, I made a 3D figure print of the design. And just really kind words from Manuel about like, I don't, design things lightly. I take consideration in what I print and design. And I saw your cover, Jared's cover, on the shelf, and was just blown away with the Usagi concept, that I felt inspired to make this 3D model. And he gave it to us. He's like, this is the first iteration, and kind of talked about how he made it. And we were just like blown away. We were like playing with it, and like Jared, can you show the shoes? Like, I particularly like the shoes of this toy. Yeah. Like just really intricate detail. Yeah, like
wow.
And then, he only brought one, right? So there's two of us there, right?
Cut the baby.
Yeah. And so, I was like, look, you're New York based. I'll let Jared take it since he's coming in from Pittsburgh. I let Jared have it. And I hope, Jared, you're gonna paint it, right? I hope.
I'm
maybe?
thinking about it. I'm also thinking about just putting it in a nice glass case. I don't even know. I'm thrilled with it though. I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
Aren't the
So that-
Sagi readers the best?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
Oh, they
Like,
truly are, man.
it was definitely a surprise, and we didn't even like. I've never been in a position where someone came to see me and then gift me, and we're strangers, like so.
It was really nice.
It was
so
It
cool.
was a happy surprise.
Mhm.
And it's just so like intricate too. I just can't believe like because it's not just like printed and then chipped off. It's like it's got articulation. It's wild. I'm afraid to do too much with it because it's so cool. But yeah. So I wanted to take a look at some of the original art. We can flip through some of the pages and talk a little bit about it. Zach, I don't know if you have it accessible, but you actually ended up with David's cover.
I do.
And you have a piece of this issue too.
I do.
With Sasuke. So issue 3 is out. We were super excited about this one coming out because we get to see a lot more sort of the acting side of things, like the drama of acting. Oh yeah. Let me get you make your screen a little bit bigger. Check out David's cover. We flipped out. Like we were excited because I mean David always is. By the way, I like to think that David is sort of an honorary guest on each of these podcasts little meetups because there's I don't know if you've watched each one, but there's a solid in each one at some point someone has said, referring to either Heroes Con or some other meetup, mentioned David, and then we end up all of us going on a 15-minute talk about how great David Peterson is.
Yeah, this happened at the signing too. Like
I have you all fooled.
I think David, I think your microphone might be the one that's buzzing.
Oh no.
I don't know if there's it might be better to just switch to your, if you have a in-computer one, might be better because I'm getting an echo when you talk.
I've
You
got
sound-
headphones in, so that shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, you kind of sound like a robot underwater when you talk.
Okay,
I hope it.
the computer mic. I hope that's.
Oh,
that
yeah,
is
there you
so
go.
much better.
Whoa,
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
crystal
in
clear.
HD, David. Thank you.
Well,
All right, nice.
But
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
David, a lot of people were complimenting on that cover, and they were like talking about on the arcade cabinet, the Shenlong, like just like catching everything and the details that
Oh
you
yeah,
had.
people were.
You
A
know,
lot of people. We
and-
were so excited that you were going to do it, and then yeah, both of us were immediately like blown away by the concept when the concept sketch came through. So we were
my original
super excited
plan.
about it.
My original plan was for every arcade cabinet to have some kind of Easter egg, but
So
when you're
cool.
at that perspective, you can kind of only see like 2 of them.
Yeah,
and everything
it's
else
narrow.
Gets covered up. But yeah, the one that he's playing on has nods to the Dragon Bellow conspiracy, and even has essentially a panel of stands that I kind of like mirrored and copied as the side of the arcade cabinet art. And then the one across from that, like behind him, has a fish on it that was supposed to be a nod to the catfish from the Usagi Turtles crossover,
Oh,
which
yeah,
was
yeah.
another cover that I did for Stan. So I got to do Dragon Bellow conspiracy covers for Stan, and I got to do that TMNT Usagi crossover. So I was trying to put in nods to not just Usagi things, but Usagi things that I've been able to have my hands on as well.
Oh, it's neat.
Yeah,
I
I loved
that.
it, and I love that you kept it kind of narrow too, because it really does feel like an arcade, like because they always, like they're so narrow and it's so like it's dimly lit, but also I mean anymore like I get ahead. Like my kids always want to go to kind of arcades or like these carpet world playground places, and they're always like I just get a headache immediately anymore. But when you're a kid, it's just like I don't know, you're in your own world there, and
Yeah.
that and you really capture that feeling of like
I like the
pocket full
acting
of quarters.
too, like, the acting with like
yeah,
the
not to
tongue
mention
sticking
the
out
acting,
and like
Yeah.
it's just like it had everything I like. The foot kind of just up a little bit too, like you're intensely playing, like just like chef kiss, David. Like
Oh
like
my
I think
gosh.
when our editor Justin forwarded us your like first design, we were like, what? Like we like just like a blowback. Like
Well,
just
thank
Yeah.
you over delivered on that cover,
Yeah.
and that's
And
why
I
I had
love-
to buy it. So.
Yeah, Yukichi's expression is just great, and him, drinking that soda, and that I love his expression.
That was
Yeah.
usually me at the
So
arcade.
great.
I was the one watching intently as someone much better than me was playing the game, and I'm just hanging on the side of the cabinet drinking a soda. Just
Yeah.
like, what happens
too.
next in this game?
It's funny
so
because
fun.
growing up, I was the kid who liked to watch other play video games. Like I couldn't handle the stress of like trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
so I wasn't a backseat gamer. I was just eating the popcorn and being like, what's gonna happen here? You know.
I liked playing. I just wasn't good enough to last very long, and so I'd run out of quarters pretty quick, and then just be like, "All right, I'm just going to stay for the show now."
I love that. Yeah, I kind of the same way. I know more and more people are trickling in. Feel free to ask questions, but we'll keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
I know.
And
That
Zach
cover concept also came up when Jared and Zach came by my table at San Diego.
That's right.
And mentioned, hey, we'd like you to do a variant cover. And there was some talk about not knowing which issue I would go in,
right.
and me saying something along the lines of like, well, I'd like to know, there's something about the story and trying to figure out that kind of stuff. And one of you, I think it was Zach, said like, well, it could be anything like 80s, like just as long as it gets the 80s vibe in there. And then I think you mentioned the Miami Vice homage cover that you already had.
Yeah, that's Jim Road.
That Jim did.
From Jim. And I was like, I don't know. I guess I could do something like in an arcade with them playing like Pac-Man or something, but obviously not Pac-Man, so that it's not a copyright infringement. And Zach was like, I love that idea. And I was like, well, if I come up with something better, I'll use that. Like, I'm sure I'll come up with something better. And when the time came, I was like, I actually still like that one the best.
Golden idea.
Yeah, that was it. And Zach liked it, so I know that it's going to go over well.
We have a quick question. What was your favorite arcade? Probably for me it was the Turtles. Fighting games are always so intense to me, and I never got very good at them. I would always just get obliterated and not get very far. Like Street Fighter 2 was really big, and Mortal Kombat 1, and then like Killer Instinct back when that was like the peak of graphic. Oh my gosh, it's so 3D. And but yeah, I probably the TMNT arcade was always my go-to. Oh, and like Time Crisis or any of the ones, even the early, poor computer graphic ones where you held a big, plastic, pistol or whatever, and had to, I think Time Crisis. I can't remember. I didn't do too many arcade sessions, but yeah, those were probably mine.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I was The Simpsons, which was a similar format to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I grew up in Southern California, and my aunt and uncle lived in an area called Whittier, and in Whittier they had something called the Nickel Arcade. Every arcade cabinet was a nickel instead of a quarter.
Oh, wow.
And so you can like $20, and it's still there, by the way. If anyone ever goes to Whittier, go to the Nickel Arcade. But what's even more rad about the Nickel Arcade is they had a free arcade section in the back. So when you ran out of $20 worth of nickels, you then like segue to like the old like cabinet games. And the big hub to do was like they transitioned Simpsons from nickel to free, and like it blew every kid's mind because finally we were at a point where like we can probably play this all the way through, because I don't think any kid has ever beat like a side scroll like fighting game till entirety, right? Like we've always gotten, we got to second level and then we call it a day because we ran out of quarters. And so finally I was like, I'm in this video game for the story today, because like it's unlimited plays. And I think Simpsons was so cartoony and fantastic, and similar to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. X-Men had a similar one too. And then Golden Axe was one of my favorites. You can like play like a different like fantasy trope, like the barbarian or the wizard, the elf. And that was a really fun game. So I'll pass it over to you, I guess, David.
I grew up when the more simplified ones were coming out, like Pac-Man and Joust and Breakout.
Oh, Joust was
But that was at a point where I didn't have any spending money. I did not have quarters to put in those. Like if I was lucky, I would get a quarter to play something like that. So Joust was one that I do remember liking, and Pac-Man. But soon after that or around that time, we got an Atari home system.
Oh yeah.
So I was never at an arcade playing those games, but yeah, at the home system, I was playing Q*bert and Pac-Man and River Raid, Keystone Capers, which was like a Keystone Cops game. Yeah, we didn't actually have Joust, unfortunately, but that Joust was one of those kind of very simple ones that I liked a lot. And then by the time that I did have spending cash, you're getting into the early to mid 90s. That's where the Ninja Turtles 4-player, the Simpsons 4-player, Gauntlet was also another 4-player that I really liked as a like big cabinet game, an experience you couldn't get anywhere else because you can't play 4 players even on a home system at that point. But of the kind of 90s stuff, Street Fighter 2 was pretty big in terms of favorite, and then there was one called Time Killers. So it was a kind of a fighting game, trying to take advantage of the popularity of them at the time, whether it was Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter or whatever. And it was it's not a good game in terms of the gameplay, and there are really easy like loopholes to kind of take advantage of, and I'm not good at these games, and I found one of the loopholes that there was like a little magic like wiggle the handle this way and hit the buttons this way as it's doing the countdown, like 3, 2, 1, fight. And if you started doing that on 1, you automatically like won the game, like won the round. Like you just stood back and watched the animation happen. And my friend who was really good at those fighting games like stormed out of the convenience store, furious that I had beat him like 2 or 3 times in a row on that cabinet. And I'm like,
and this was called Time Killers?
Like, it was called Time Killer. It was
so the hack was killing time? Like it was literally like feeding the clock.
It was all different eras of people throughout time coming together and fight. So there was a medieval knight.
This sounds rad.
There was a medieval knight. There was a caveman. There were like people from the future. I was from like a post-apocalyptic thing where a guy had a chainsaw for a hand, but more punk and grunge than Ash from Evil Dead. That was my guy. His name was Rancid. And it would go Rancid.
Oh my, this is like peak 90s.
Rancid wins.
Oh yeah, gosh.
At the second mark.
Eat it, everybody. This is the only game I'm going to beat you at. Rancid wins.
I need to look into this. That's amazing. Stan, did you play any arcade cabinets?
Yeah, not really. When I was in college, the big thing was Tank and Pong.
I love Tank.
Oh, fun.
And most of you never heard of those. But the only time I went to an arcade for real was we were in camping, and we were in Idaho. We went to a small town, and we had to do our laundry. We were out camping for about 2 weeks already. And so they had one machine, and I put a quarter in, started playing, and it's like, in the course of just a few minutes, it must have gone through like $20. So I figured, no, I can't afford this because we won't have gas money to get back. But we got the Atari system and the Nintendo and all those. And actually, there was a guy who worked for, I think it was Microsoft or somewhere, but I traded artwork, and he sent me all these games, and my kids loved it, Call of Duty and all these other stuff. But
that's amazing.
That was, I used to trade for, we'd barter. There was one guy who worked for Cadbury. So I did a drawing, and he sent me a whole box of chocolates. It was great.
Stan, can you regale us with like what else have you traded art for? Like, I'm just like, what treasures are in your house? For, like
a couple of haircuts.
That's amazing.
Stan,
a gig economy.
Did you have the guy? I would say this would be maybe 2009, 2010-ish, who had a huge list of DVD box sets that he would trade artwork for. Did you interact with that guy?
There was one guy, I think it's Mike-chan on the Dojo site, and I traded artwork for him, and he sent me the entire Zatoichi movies.
Okay.
So those are great, and I trade stuff like that. And,
this was a different guy who just had he had tons of box sets.
Like he'd
And,
bring
yeah.
it to the show. Like
He would
I'm
mail
trying
it. He'd ship it. He'd email and say, "Here's my list of everything." Or if you have movies that you've thought of, and I got like the Godfather trilogy and
Oh, yeah.
and all the Indiana Jones movie, anything that was a box set of DVDs traded for artwork. And I just started to realize I don't think he's coming by these as
Yeah,
honestly
like,
as,
legitimately.
as honestly as he like. I don't think they're stolen, but I think he's taken advantage of some loophole he has at some other job, and I probably shouldn't be involved. So
Yeah,
I
you
think
don't want
I think I
that.
have enough of the box sets on. We're good. We're good. For
Yeah.
now.
I
You
think
step
back in
away
the
from the
90s,
crime syndicate you were
back in the
fulfilling.
90s, that's how I got my Hong Kong movies, like all the Jackie Chan ones and John Woo's and stuff. So, I mean, those.
So
are
you know, Jared, you can trade an issue for a Supra now, right? Like, is that your goal? You know, get
Yeah,
a
there you
car?
go. I trade my way up like those people who do videos where they trade their way up from like a whatever, a ball of light
to
or
like a
something
house.
to a
Yeah.
house or something. I have no skill. I would go backwards. I would end up, in debt somehow and not understanding what I did. By the way,
3 projects deep, right? You know, like
yeah, right. By the way, Carl on the chat says that he's got 3 of us. He's got a variant from 3 of us on here, and he needs you to draw one, Zach. So this is
I know.
another person mentioning that you need to draw something for him.
I
So
don't.
we've got to
I don't
figure
think
something out for you, man.
anyone. I think if the combined might and strength of the 3 artists in this room will not be able to teach me how to draw. Like, maybe one day, Carl.
I'm wondering if there's a like old school ASCII art sort of a way to do this, where it's your script, but certain characters are made larger or
Oh,
in
that's a
bold
cool idea. Yeah.
to make
Ah.
the image, or even if it's just like a silhouette of the character.
That's
But,
cool.
but it's your words. It's just a text formatting problem
Stop
to
helping.
solve.
Yeah.
Or
So,
it's just or it's just white space, and the text that's your script only
Yeah,
wraps
like,
inside the form
around.
of
Oh, that's a cool
the
idea. Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll maybe.
There you go.
It does sound fun. It actually does sound rad. Like a writer's variant. Watch, we're gonna kick off a whole new trend in the industry where it's like the writer's variant cover, and we can attribute to this conversation right here. So
I think you should go beyond all of us and go beyond art into like the Dada stuff. And you should we'll sell Carl a stick and you can be like, I'm questioning what paper and a cover actually is.
it's like
This cover is about the duality of man.
Yeah.
So I thought we could go and flip through the original art and kind of talk a little bit about the process of putting this one together. On the writing side, and then making the pictures. So this is the cover, and I had mentioned this on one, and I should probably pull it down. I have the concept that Stan did for this cover was a tribute to the Yukichi's first appearance, second printing. I think that was which was IDW. So there's a cover, and it's just like kind of a gradient background. It's this very stark image of Usagi Yojimbo and Yukichi, and Yukichi's kind of standing prominently, and they both look really cool. And anyhow, this one is a tribute to that. So I was trying to figure out a way to kind of work that pose and posture, but in a different setting. So putting it in a kind of famous Osaka landmark, where we can see the the Hitachi Tower. And all of the neighborhood around it. So, and then I wanted to have the motorcycle. So, because at one point, Yukichi rides off on a motorcycle, which we'll get to in a little bit when we start flipping through the pages. So this is the cover. Sometimes people will ask like what these things are done on. I use mostly Arches or Saunders. This is cold pressed watercolor paper and transparent watercolor with gouache on top. So a lot of these opaque parts are gouache. And then I don't typically use ink, although I did for the comics, because we were trying to stick to as much of the traditional connection to Yojimbo as possible. And since Stan is, works a lot with ink, we wanted to have ink. So I have used ink in the actual comic pages, but for the most part, for a long time, I sort of usually use gouache. So this is gouache, both on the opaque parts on top that sit on top, and then also in these lanterns, and then also on for the inking, I guess you'd call it. If you
Now, do you put the gouache outlines last, or do you put it before you put the watercolors on?
I put the gouache, I usually do pencil, and I
Mhm.
don't usually draw backgrounds extensively. Typically, I mean, sometimes on a cover I'll be a little bit more specific, like especially if it's something that's like relatively 3-point perspective like this, where it sort of needs to go in a direction, and then I will watercolor and take it to a point, and then use the gouache on top.
Yes.
Let me see. I'm gonna pull up the. Oh, I'm such a goof. I have it right here. I forgot. Here, let me grab it. I forgot I have it. I had it in a binder for a long time, and I finally framed it and put it on the wall next to the. I have the concept sketch that you did for it, not the final, but the concept sketch for it. Here we go.
Oh yeah.
Justin's helping me. He was sending me the image from the comic, but I forgot I have the actual book here. So this was the this is the book that I was trying to do a tribute for this one. It's so shiny. There we go.
And that cover was a homage to my Usagi #1 from
Awesome.
from
Yeah.
Fan Graphics, I think. Yeah.
I definitely recognize that in the posture. That one I don't have out here to grab, but people can maybe Google
exactly.
it. It's an easy one to find. That's a very another famous one. At a Heroes Con one year, I did a painting of Spider-Man swinging by the convention center, and he has an armful of comics, and some of them are flying out of his hands, and in the pile that are flying out of his hands is the issue 1 Usagi, the orange background, and him standing in a similar posture. So it's always sort of found its way into stuff I've drawn. Let me see if I'm centered here for Instagram. But so just flipping through the pages, we can flip through the pages and talk a little bit about the process. So we start out at the warehouse, and with our heroes. Make sure I'm on the thing.
Yeah, you're good, Jerry. You look good.
Okay, good. It's like slightly different on each one, so I'm trying to like check back over my shoulder. It's hard to both do this and then also look back over my shoulder. But yeah, so we start out finally getting to see Sasuke have some action and drama and discussion with the characters, the main cast and stuff. So that was a whole lot of fun working this stuff out. So Zach did a lot of kind of the heavy lifting of figuring out the character of how Sasuke was going to be and how he was going to interact with the characters, their sort of dynamic and relationship. And he had the idea of him kind of coming in and showcasing each character's, character, like how they behave around someone, and then also, how they all interact with him, and then his sort of confident, dismantling of their confidence.
Yeah, and Jared, if you go on, I think to the kind of like storytelling scene, right? We talked at length about how that was going to be illustrated, right? Like I feel like wasn't there the earlier iteration was like more like a drawing style? Like we were trying to explore how to distinguish that aspect, the kind of the coffee water pages, basically, Jared, right? And you were the one who came up with like, oh, I'm just going to use coffee water. And I was like, oh, okay. And then just seeing that final product at the end.
I had been flipping through a lot of Japanese art and art books at the library. And then also like I have a very like distinct memory of going to the LACMA, and they have like a whole wing of like, samurai armor and Japanese art, and like the big panel boards of watercolor and traditional watercolor on like the silk stuff, and then the screen printing stuff, and all of that art like always sticks out in my mind. So I was trying to figure out a way to kind of recapture this idea of those like the big panels that have like these, just like whole cities, with all these little tiny figures and stuff going on. And I thought I really liked the idea of him like having this kind of mystical scroll or paper. By the way, someone asked if this is the original Sasuke. Yes. So in theory, this is the original Sasuke who's kind of piecing this all together for them. The kind of adventure and why all these sort of things are happening, how they're all overlapping and what's kind of going on. So I like the idea of him having this sort of mystical scroll and then passing out this tea and then like splatting the tea and then this sort of like forming into one of those panels of like a traditional watercolor, silk watercolor, where you see the kind of what do you call that perspective? Isometric perspective, where it's sort of going to two or going back at two angles and consistent angles, and then building out the town and stuff on top of it. I was excited to hear, and a couple of people called it out, but on this page in particular, there's an Easter egg for people. If you look down in the city over in the right, you can see. I hope I'm in frame.
Yeah, you're good.
You can see the woodcutter couple.
Oh, yeah, I see them.
Yeah.
Who's are like a favorite of mine to see pop up throughout the books. And then, I know, like, especially with the people who are who read a lot of Usagi will mention, or I'll have people who ask me if I'll do a drawing for them. And a lot of times people will say, oh, can you put the woodcutters in the background? So I knew at some point I wanted to have the woodcutters couple in it somewhere, like either walking by or, having some kind of conversation or some modern iteration of them. But I like the idea of them being in the art, sort of like these stories have been passed down for, generation and generation. And now they're like, they're, preserved in this art. And I think Zach, you have
I'm holding up the
page.
other page following.
Can you move it a little more center, or it might be so it's on the Instagram center. Oh, you should be good. Never mind. Oh, you're good.
Okay, yeah.
It's just delayed. Sorry. So I like the idea. Like I looked at a lot of samurai art, just paintings of samurai, and I really love that distinct graphic nature that they're drawn in. So I like the idea of trying to paint Usagi Yojimbo, but in that sort of culturally relevant traditional manner, where they have sort of like the fabrics are very bulky on the figures, and they're always in these really dynamic poses. So I had a whole lot of fun drawing those.
Yeah, and to jump in, Jared, I think this was some of the hardest dialogue I've ever written.
Oh yeah, this is one of those where I kind of was like, all right, I'll figure out the pictures, and I don't know what he's gonna say.
And we talked extensively about this page, right? Because like we really wanted to kind of, this is a pivotal moment, right, where we're kind of connecting the dots a little bit between Stan's wonderful Edo period lore, and how that like through line kind of comes in, and the Jay will return. We talked extensively about that bubble. Like I think I had some other dialogue, right, Jared, that you're like, I don't, you were right to push in the sense of like, how are we gonna this flow of like the convergence of ancestral lines, and he's talking in riddles, right? Like the way Sasuke does, in a way. And I think just with your art, really, I think we landed it, but it was a page that we wanted to get right, because this is the issue where we kind of, the stakes kind of come into focus, and this exposition kind of really pushes that. And I just like how Sasuke is really centered here, right? And just the lining you have around him. It's just
it was great. Super fun to draw. That was where I was really trying to lean on that. Like I was saying, the stuff I've seen at the LACMA and at the gallery in New York, there's like beautiful big panels that sort of like, they're so immersive and so interesting.
While on the sorry, Jared, just to interrupt. While we're on coffee, David, am I remembering correctly? You coffee dyed commissions, or like did artwork where you used coffee water? Or am I making this up in my head?
I think you're confusing stuff that I've done with Jeremy Bastian. Jeremy had coffee stained prints.
Okay,
but nope, I haven't coffee stained.
I could see that. I would believe it, because you use a lot of earth tones in your work. I can see that being something that you've used, or something as like a ground or something.
I love the the technique of taking what is in our world a historical document and then trying to emulate the style of it to then give your own story that historical credence. I've done the same thing in Mouse Guard with like emulating the Bayeux Tapestry or emulating illuminated manuscript pages from like the Book of Kells and things like that, to
Oh yeah, gosh.
like looking at that artistic style and then going, how can I kind of make that work? But then that way people understand you're reading a story within a story and that it has this like historical gravitas. So excellent job, Jared, with
Oh, thank
So-
you so much.
so
You can
for-
see the
like-
splatter, by the way, the coffee.
Yeah, the coffee.
So I
Yeah.
started out by actually splattering it with coffee just for the sake of getting it started, and then pushing it in, and then like layering it. So I can't remember if we mentioned it directly, but for the panels that are toned like this, I toned the paper and then painted it, like switching out water for coffee water. So I had coffee water and used it instead of the regular water. So even the places that have color, except for the white opaque paint on top, which I tried to add also with a little bit of stuff in it to get it kind of a little bit grimy and more loose. So there's like bits of it's casein paint, so it's like a little more chalky, because I noticed that in the traditional Japanese paintings they would have an opaque paint applied on top for like the white on decoration or clouds or things, and it always had this sort of chalky aged kind of look to it. So I used casein paint broke down with a little bit of coffee water too, so it gets this sort of I don't know how well that translates, because at this point we're getting to like microscopic on a comic book page.
casein is milk based, isn't it?
Casein is milk based. It smells
So you put milk in your
horrific.
coffee.
So oh my goodness.
Okay, no.
You like cream in your coffee.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of the big part. We were excited, and then I was really excited for this dynamic, because now we finally get into the relationship. By the way, I am jotting down the questions. Apple, we'll get to your question in a minute, because that's a big discussion.
Jared, before we leave the coffee pages, two
Sure.
questions. One, what coffee did you use?
Oh, I like Stumptown, which is funny because I like Stumptown a lot. And then I just did a painting workshop where I taught painting in Portland, and
Portland,
they're
yes.
like, yeah,
They're from Portland. Yeah.
yeah, and they were like, yeah, they're just kind of everywhere. That's like just the sort of, it wasn't that special to them, but I was like, oh, Stumptown, it's so fancy.
And a quick follow up: light, medium, or dark roast?
I like a medium or
Okay.
dark, and light roast I get because I have a hard time stopping. So if I do light roast, because there's a little more caffeine, I'll keep going until I start shaking and can't figure out why I'm about to have a panic attack.
And then the
I'm
the
like,
painting. the drawing
coffee.
Yeah.
I have to stop. So.
And Kyle's right. Kyle's right. By the way, I did do one tea stain or a coffee stained print. I had forgotten that one. Yeah, the Mortimer print. That's true.
Oh, cool.
I didn't want to say that Kyle's a liar. There, he's telling the truth.
It's okay.
I'm the liar.
Thank you, Kyle, for
I'm-
validating my memory.
I'm curious, Jared, about the strength of the coffee. Not in terms of like how strong is it, like light, dark roast, but like if you were doing ink wash, some people with ink wash will have 100% black. Then they'll pre-mix something that's maybe 50, and then they'll just have clean water, and they'll kind of massage the steps in between by
Interesting.
doing a little water or and some people mix every percentage, like they'll have 100, 90, 80, 70, 60, etc., all the way down.
Yeah.
Some people just do 100% and then have clean water and then just have a little mixing cup in the middle, and they keep kind of going back and forth. So it's like maybe a 50% solution, then you add a little more water, now it's down to 40. What was your methodology for keeping your gradients consistent with
I'll
coffee?
tell you what my methodology is now. Ask for advice, because I did not do any of that. That sounds awesome. No, I had a pot of coffee, and I had what was left over, and I just poured it into a cup, and I used it as just like the water. And then any of these darker elements are like, I still used paint. I just used paint with
okay.
coffee so like this blue I used, the ultramarine, got really kind of dingy, and
So all the coffee all the sepia brown stuff.
Yeah, the
is
sepia
is
stuff
with
is burnt umber. It's just this. burnt
okay. It's
umber.
with paint that has coffee water as a base. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's
I
just
thought
burnt
that
umber.
part was straight coffee.
No, that's it's burnt umber with coffee in it, so it sort of acts like a kind of a mother tone or whatever, mother color. But it's but I just used it like water. So like the green trees are all sort of, everything is a little knocked down a little bit in saturation and maybe a little warmer. But the actual darker coffee color is just burnt umber, and then the really dark bits are burnt umber with ultramarine, half and half. It's mostly burnt umber and ultramarine in some variation, with a couple pops of red and then the white casein on top. So then we finally get into the dynamic, the growing kind of tension and then dynamic between Kaito and Tomo, which I have been super excited about since we started doing this. And I know I'm probably saying her name wrong, but I have a hard time saying things correctly. So so I've been super excited about this because since we started the project and we were working on a couple different iterations of what she would be, I knew I wanted them to start out on opposite ends and really kind of explore the idea of, as a reader, having a bit of frustration in that, like, you're like, oh man, because I love, and I know like I'm not the only one, because I see like there are people who have whole fan art accounts on the dynamic between Yojimbo and her in the original series and even in space and everything. So it's I really wanted to try to experiment with them being on the opposite side. So starting on opposite ends, and then we as the reader kind of get to grow, develop, and earn their bond. Not to get too ahead of my skis here, but
yeah, in this issue, you really see the relationships start to develop here. Before they were just antagonistic, like they're a cop and robber or something.
Yeah.
Now it's a bit more intricate. So.
Yeah, and I was really excited about this. Like, there are some parts where I get to do a part, and then Zach does a part, or I do a part, then he does a part, or I do a part and he modifies it, or he does a part and I modify it. And then this was one that I had. This sequence here was one I had done, and then we went through a couple iterations, but I kept saying, I really wanted to punch that filing cabinet, man. Like, I kept bringing, because I had this little gag in mind.
It was talked about a lot.
I kept bringing it back up because I was like, we can't drop the. I really want to do this little gag where he says, that everybody's fine except for the filing cabinet, and then just consistently in the background, there's just this broken, bent filing cabinet. And I thought that would be really fun. It was also fun to get to do some more night stuff. I don't typically do a lot of night stuff, but we've had a lot of stuff happen to take place at night, so it's been fun to get to kind of think through the value structure of like what dynamic the color range would be and how the highlights would change or lighting would change.
So
Jerry,
effective.
is that an actual building? Like, did you look up Osaka Police Headquarters? Just out of
That's the
curiosity?
original. That's the real one. That's the original one from
really?
the 80s. It's
I wondered about that too.
this is the original one. I looked at maybe a helicopter kind of picture of it, and then just sort of imagined. And it's been in some anime, some older anime. They've had it in the background. It's since been shut down, and they've got a new, like, really nice one that came, like, I think maybe even late 80s or 90s, which is what they currently have. But in the 80s they had this, and it's like basically just a big rectangle, and it had a lot of like satellites and stuff on top. But you can kind of find a couple photos of it. So it was just sort of like, because it's a cube, it's sort of convenient because you can just sort of rotate the cube, and then I looked up parking decks or things at nighttime just to see the dynamic against the city light of how it would be lit, especially with spotlights and things all around it.
Yeah, it's so easy to do a night scene and make it too like where you can't see anything.
Yeah, it's more luminescent than you'd think, especially in a city, which is, has a lot of glow to the lower, like the beneath the zenith of the sky, and then of course you have all these. I always like being able to pop in the windows, because it's very dark, and you put in these little bright. This is all white with a little bit of yellow ochre in it to make it.
Well, and that tells a story too, right? Like the fact that the lights are off in almost every room.
Yeah.
it's maybe
good-
only the cleaning crew or one or two people who are staying late to
Yeah.
finish up some paperwork, and that tells the story right there that it's nighttime without even getting the color information.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then this was a part it was funny because Zach and I've been kind of going back and forth because he was really nervous about this one because we kind of came into the story so hot action wise. And then we had talked about like kind of like with classical music, like it's like it gets really exciting, but then like in really good ones, it slows down and then it kind of speeds back up, and you can kind of pull the slingshot back a little bit before launching into some high action, and it has a little bit more drama than if we've just like pedal to the floor the whole time. So we had gone through a couple iterations of making this one a lot shorter and then more action, more cool stuff, but we both decided that it would be better to have a lot more of the acting showcased and have the story kind of allow the story to slow down a little bit with a couple beats that were kind of funny. Like
For the
Yukichi
previous
is
page, page, my favorite element is that last panel, and you have the water that spilled on the table.
oh yeah, she,
and the highlights
she slams the
everything.
table and
Yeah,
knocks
I
the
thought,
water
oh,
over.
It just jumped out at me when I first saw it. Oh, that's really neat.
She's really angry.
Yeah, I love,
like
I love it, and I love also in drawing it, getting to draw, because every time she has a little outburst where she gets angry, and in my imagination, she's sort of like jerking or like slamming the table or punching the filing cabinet, her bun becomes a little less like tethered. So her hair is progressively, as she's getting like losing her control a little bit in the scene, her hair is progressively getting more and more wild as she gets
and
more
that
and more
one-way
sort of
mirror shot
wild
too.
and-
Jared.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the reflection. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the one that's the panel that Stan picked out from 2 pages ago now, that that's essentially establishing shot for the room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It gives us all a complete sense of, even though we've had panels before that, and we can probably fill in some gaps about it's a police interrogation room. But when you see that, you're like, oh, I know the exact how much room there is either side of the desk, where the mirror is in relation, that there isn't other stuff, there isn't a bench, there isn't another 3 set of chairs as backups. They're like, this is all there is in the room. Here's where they are. And it allows drawing the characters at a different perspective too.
Yeah, I love a bird's eye kind of shot. Always, I'm a fan of doing that. And then also, I wanted to kind of showcase the claustrophobia of the situation, because they don't like each other, and she's got him, so he is trapped in this cage, and it to me intensifies the drama that there's no elbow room. They're shutting this thing together, and she's progressively getting angrier and angrier, but they're stuck, which is kind of the theme of their dynamic,
like kind of their
forward.
relationship. Yeah. I mean, they both want the same thing, right? Which is like, but they're coming at it from different ends. And so just to go a little bit back to what Jared said about this issue slowing down, we were very aware of like, we needed to really establish the stakes. And this really added a lot of that element as we were pushing into what we'll be seeing as the final act and conclusion of this first arc. And her emotion really carries that. I think adds a lot of fun element to the stakes.
Yeah, and I also wanted them to mirror each other's like balance of confidence, overconfidence, to being shook, to being taking it too personally, and so she's progressively getting more and more angry and wilder looking. Before Ishida, it was also fun to have Ishida in it too, like to get to have that character. I know a lot of people I've had a lot of people say they were really excited about that. He's a another big fan favorite that I was really excited to get to have in the story. And that immediately came up when we mentioned talking about what we wanted the characters to be. And we talked a little bit about having her be a police officer. We immediately, both of us were like, oh, we have to have Ishida in it somehow. And in some angle or some aspect. And
Jared, can you go back one page? Sorry,
yeah, sure.
Just again, the mirror reflection. I just want to highlight just the technical, like just so cool to see.
It was super
in
fun.
that. Yeah, just how you established that so well.
And it was fun, and I like having Ishida being the observer and calling out their like you're so similar and yet somehow you hate each other, it was a fun dynamic. And then getting to have Ishida do a little bit of kind of acting too, and some drama and in their dynamic and relationship, and then having to put her in a situation that she doesn't want to be in too. So and then I also always enjoy having Yukichi perpetually being happy in this iteration of him, where he's excited. He's like, oh, hey, welcome, like
the only one, her, right?
Yeah. Everyone else is like, upset about it. And then it's not part of this directly, but I have a backstory in mind about the jacket and the sword being her father's. And have a lot of stuff about that and his dynamic and relationship with Ishida that is on the shelf, so to speak. It was like, maybe keep it in there. And,
we have a bunch of these ideas in a book, right?
Yeah, we've been collecting all these side ideas and in a book, and I thought it would be really fun to have Yukichi kind of challenge her, like the awkwardness of her carrying this sword, especially in that era, because it's not commonplace that everyone would carry one. And so now she's in this situation. She can't carry her gun, so she's carrying her father's sword that she's been trained with. And so she sort of does a quick little I had this
Yu's face here is so great.
I had this scene in mind from the, like, as we were plotting out from the beginning. I was like, I really want a scene where she like swings the sword around and Yukichi says she peeled me like a banana. I thought that would be funny. And then fun to get to do some more night scenes, just getting to do like the water and the reflections in the water. I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. So so we're almost to the end here of the pages, but we have Kaito can't get over this vision that he had earlier in the issues. And so he because of his inability to just communicate his emotion, he has this sort of outburst and miscommunication or indirect miscommunication, not being able to just sort of convey his feelings about the situation and the growing stakes and his need to feel like the kind of older brother, sort of protector to his cousin. And so we have Yukichi speeding off on a wet, late night scene. And then this part was fun to talk about, because I knew I also wanted to have, because I have always really loved the statues, and one of my favorite ones of the original series of the Yojimbo series is is it 10,000? I'm going to say the wrong number, but the Jesus statues.
Oh, the Jesus,
yeah. And I love that story from the old one. So I wanted to have one of them somewhere in an environment, but it's one that has sort of been left over or maybe dropped at some point and then forgotten deep in a forest. So they travel deep into a forest here, and for people who are fans of the original series, they can see there's this covered in Takagi hanging out with it as they kind of work their way going deeper.
And this location's a real location too. We talked at length of like where we were gonna kind of have the rendezvous be, that Sasuke says. And so Jared and I were looking at a map of Osaka and like, what's
we were
realistic?
going through all these different places.
Like
where there's a waterfall
here.
And we thought that was kind of neat and sort of mystical as like a starting point. And we figured like, what if you went deep into the woods, like past the waterfall, and there were like these like temple ruins.
And for those who haven't been to Japan, like what's wonderful is like you'll go to parks and you'll go on a hike, and all of a sudden you'll turn a corner and there'll just be like a tiny shrine that like was like just surprises you. They're in these nooks and crannies. So it's not out of the question to have like a big park, have kind of a temple that is like maintained, and feels mystical. That's what's so magical about Japan, right? Is they honor all these deities and fox shrines and stuff like that, and so it was really fun to like figure out where we wanted that to be, and then like really think about how long would it take to get there, so it's still night, right? And
this
we
was
in the park,
And this was, by the way, like a kind of a thing that I was thinking about being a classic nod, or a nod to classic Yojimbo, by the way, which was just having the air and the space, like not rushing straight into the drama of the conclusion, but take a minute, take a page and some space to have something that is actually culturally relevant and tradition.
Right, purifying, yeah.
And then I also wanted to have, so they are purifying before they enter the temple. Sasuke does it, and then they line up to do it. And I wanted their reaction to be similar to their character, but also make the space for him to be the good guy here in this situation, that Jen is just being snarky and he's saying, like, he's kind of keeping him in check. Because I thought that would be, you know, a good homage to the character you know, to be respectful of the space and be respectful of the man. So, because he's thrown them all off, given that he knows, like, he clearly knows them and they don't know why. They've been put in this crazy situation. So this was one last thing, and we're done with the pages. But I knew that we hadn't figured out a lot of the dynamics of what we wanted to happen, but I knew I wanted to have a situation where they enter something, and that only two can go in, because I wanted a situation where their dynamic is explored further and heightened, and so we have they enter this thing. She thinks he's trying to run away, so she follows in after him, not really paying attention to him saying only two people can go into this building. So there's this sort of, you know, big shrine in the behind them. They go through the door, and then Jen is confused by the whole thing, and he waits for a minute, and then he goes in after them, and then he falls right into a ditch, and it's just ruins and kind of a forgotten. So that leads us to, you know, where'd they go? Kind of
cliffhanger. Yeah.
That's the hope, you know. So
They went to the next issue.
they went to the next
Yeah,
issue.
there you go. Yeah.
Where she battles the final filing cabinet boss.
Yeah. The Revenge of the Filing Cabinet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. And
So yeah, and then we have our little side comic that we've been working on the side.
Those
So
are fun. I love those.
they're so fun to draw. We have I guess shout out to Tommy Lee. We have our buddy Tommy Lee in the shot with Zach. Yeah, so we love doing these little side comics just to talk a little bit about the process and making it, and then have something that is our own way of kind of trying to do a direct letter to the readers to try to have a connection. I've had a lot of people mention that to me, that they feel like a lot of the modern comics lack that. Because I remember that when I was a kid, getting to, you know, people writing letters, and you get your, you know, I think Spider-Man should fight Winnie the Pooh or whatever in the back of Amazing Spider-Man or whatever, and your name and your town or whatever. And, so we wanted to do something that kind of connects us to it, and then it was fun to get to do the everybody at San Diego hanging out.
And just to jump on the process for these letters, they're kind of interesting because, like, we'll draft a letter. Like, I'll just draft a letter, like, of like what we want to say to the reader, and then we have to talk about like what is actually happening visually. And so
you kind of weirdly work the same way we do, almost the same way. We do,
same way we do.
You write out a letter, and then I kind of think of the visuals and the gags, and then we go back and forth. Or you'll say, here's the letter, and then I think it would be funny if, like the coffee thing was your idea, like it, you know, so.
It tastes disgusting. Yes.
Yeah, we have a similar process to the way the actual books are put together as well.
Yeah, and yeah, it's really fun. You know, each issue will have one, so can confirm. You know, so you
we made it through.
We made it work. And I now Jared and I were like, all right, we'll just have to normalize this now. You know, if we get to do more.
I genuinely love doing it. So it is no.
They are fun. Yeah, and it we'll, you know. Don't be afraid to tell us what you also like. I think, you know, you all in the fandom are great. So you're good inspiration too, is like what we want to share. And something about the letters too, that's very important to us is like, we want to share some of the history of like where our research is like actually distilling from. And so just to kind of, you'll see that in the next issue of 4, the letter really talks about some historical elements that's influencing, the story we're telling. And so there's this little bit of opportunity to give a little bit of education. And I think you've seen that in the back matter, right? We added like facts about Osaka Castle, and, you know, I geek out because we get to share that with you all, like just, you know, things that either we've learned in our research or me learned being there. And hopefully, you know, you all enjoy that.
Yeah. So I'm going to jump and do a little bit of drawing and chat, and we can continue chatting and answer questions about
Well,
whatever you guys
before
want to
you
ask.
do that, can I share a bit of artwork
Yes.
myself?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
please.
Yeah. heck yeah.
This is a cover,
Yeah, that's your variant.
of my variant.
Oh, I loved that one. I just thought that was so cool.
Stan, how long did the steps take you? Like that the detail here, astounding.
Well,
Yeah.
I made the steps like looking up. That way I didn't have to, you know, it's cheating, but I didn't have
Is
to.
that an artistic? Like, I actually don't like. Why is that an artistic cheat? Sorry for like not knowing, but like, is it just easier
otherwise
to?
you'd have to draw all the individual steps. This way I'll just
I see. I see.
draw,
Okay.
draw the
You'd have to
line.
draw the steps and the treads, and because of
Exactly.
perspective,
Yeah,
they're not
right.
even. And the only way to make that look right is to do all the geometry math with where
Yeah.
the vanishing point is, so that the higher it goes, the less you're seeing of each tread. But if you
Right.
do it from down below,
Mhm.
there's
Same
no
effect,
math.
but less work,
No-
right?
no
like
ma-
that.
no
Sorry,
math.
that's
Yeah.
I think
really.
it's perspective for this one, especially for the footy.
For the arch, yeah.
Yeah.
This is why Jin is so big in our iteration of Jin, is because he covers up stuff. I'm kidding. Just throw Jin like how Tomo is there. You throw Jin in, you wouldn't have to draw a chair.
For the artwork for paintings, I always do the description of what's.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh, that's
so
cool. I didn't know that. Oh yeah,
That's awesome.
and the date. Yeah,
That's
cool.
so cool.
Date and everything.
I love that, Stan. That's pretty great. Yeah, that cover. Just like Jared said, your the colors there just really pop out.
Oh, thank
I
you.
love the foggy mistiness of it. I just thought it was so
the
perfect for the
when
atmosphere and the.
when I first saw the, I think you said the thumbnails, and oh yeah, it would be nice with all the fog at the bottom.
Good old Shinto gate. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the
exactly.
perspective again. And so happy you've got to do a variant for every issue, Stan. I know when we were starting out,
fun,
you
yeah.
know.
Oh yeah, I know.
You
We were
worked
like,
hard for
gosh, I
that.
hope he's we didn't want you to be too bogged down if you were busy or had other stuff you're trying to do. And but it was a very exciting and
Oh,
nice
it's fun.
surprise
I
that you were
love
able
it.
to get it.
Actually, I proposed something to Justin, and I hope we'll be able to do it. But do a new Usagi story that starts in feudal Japan and is resolved. In
Oh, that would be amazing.
1984 or something.
Oh,
That's so
cool.
funny. This keeps kind of happening. But Zach and I, we were in New York. We were walking around, and I kept telling him we should talk about a story that either involves space and then space goes back and then they go back, or
You
starting
yeah, you
in-
literally said that to me.
yeah, I was like, how cool would it be if we started either in feudal or in one of them, and then somehow
Oh.
we ended up running across
I feel like
space
Stan-
or
Yeah.
Yojimbo. I think that would be so cool.
I feel like I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight because of this
I know, me neither.
idea, and I have to like my head's spinning, and my wife's she's out right now. It's her college reunion. She's going to come home, and I'm going to be up at like 3 a.m. being like, I
I know,
figured it
pacing
out.
around.
Like, you know, like
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. That would be super fun. That'd be amazing. I'd love to see. So I'm going to draw a little bit, and we can chat some. I had some really good questions. I think would spark a good debate or a chat rather, which is also someone asked if we're going to be at NYCC. I'm not sure if I am going to be. I would like to be but I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. So I have the sequel to my book Cody comes out September 1st. So Cody 2 comes out, and then I have to do SPX because that's going to be like the release show for that. And then I don't know what exactly or where exactly I'm going to be, but I know I'm going to be trying to do that one. I know I'm not doing Lightbox this year. I might try to go for fun because I just love going to Pasadena, but
we'll be at Heroes, right? So,
but Heroes are David, are you doing?
I'll be there. Yeah.
Woohoo! Yes, awesome. That's exciting. I know that everybody's been people ask me to ask Stan if I can get him to go to Heroes. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what he's doing.
I love Heroes Con. Unfortunately,
They love you. I know.
Yeah, I don't travel as much, but yeah, Heroes is one of my favorite conventions. Heroes,
me too.
Baltimore, yeah, San Diego.
I think
Europe,
I think I mentioned it on here before. With I'm pretty sure I did, but Heroes was my first one that I started going to before I started drawing. and was that got a lot of. Yeah, this is one of the times that we mentioned David Peterson. I'm remembering now that we went down the David Peterson's awesome diatribe. But I met Andy Runton and Chris Schweitzer there, and kind of got advice from them over the years for drawing and things. So I'm going to draw a little bit, and we can chat some.
Maybe I'll draw some too then.
And yeah, that'd be fun. And
Yeah,
I'll try to be.
Throw some questions, everyone. I will try
If you have any
know,
questions you want to ask Stan or David, and we can relay them. I know I have
Kyle did ask, did David get to choose what animal he was in the little flyer you did for tonight's event?
No, because I hastily drew that because I did the thing because we weren't really sure. I was like getting ready to get on the plane when I was putting the little picture together, and so we were asking David as I was like putting it together, and I was like, I don't even have time to wait, man. I have to like literally like get kids to bed, sleep for like 3 hours, and then get on the plane. So because I had
it's the right choice.
flight.
It's the right choice. The mouse was the right choice. I mean, anything else would have been confusing. Like, why?
That's true.
Off brand, right?
True.
You know,
why is he a fox? That doesn't make any sense.
And Stan, the whole Sakai family, right? Bunnies, right? We had to,
Oh yeah, that was I didn't ask
those,
permission.
yeah.
I just did that too. I've not been asking permission. It's funny when I used to do journal comics, and I would ask people who were going to be in them what animal they'd want to be, and usually people would just say something, but sometimes people would say some crazy like shoebill or axolotl or something that I'm like, okay, well, like to scale, that's going to look ridiculous. Like I stopped asking people when I do them.
We did ask one person. We asked our editor Justin what he wanted to be.
Oh, I did ask Justin, because I knew we wanted to have Justin in it.
And you nailed his likeness as the dog. Yeah. And
that's Tommy his dog, I think, his actual dog.
And then we kind of did that kind of same. We didn't ask Tommy Lee. We just took his dog and like made it Tommy Lee.
Right, exactly. I just sort of looked up his dog.
But I feel like, Jared, there's going to come a point that we're anthropomorphizing known people, that you're going to start getting these commission requests to be like,
I don't know. Yeah.
Draw me.
I've always loved anthropomorphic. I mean, like I probably have mentioned this too, at least in some capacity. But one of the big reasons why I do watercolor is anthropomorphic comics because of Louis Trondheim's Little Nothings. And I love those books, and I have them up here, but all my French books are all like super tightly congested, and I risk knocking my entire shelf down. But when I had gone to like a comics library, and they had a French section, and I had never seen French comics before. And other than maybe like a couple Mobius things pop up here and there, because you just hear the name. And I went and I immediately, like, I got like The Rabbi's Cat from Jones Farr, and Cyril Pedrosa's Three Shadows, and Louis Trondheim's Little Nothings, and they had the whole stack of all of these, and I just would like pour it over it and was just enamored with like, so they're like diary comics, and they're just about his daily day in the life, and there's like a lot of other cartoonists in it that pop up, and they're all different animals and stuff. So that whole thing is just sort of ripping off Louis Trondheim, if I'm being honest. I just love his drawings, and I also love his subtle approach with the watercolor, because it's not, I mean, I say that as someone who's very, I think, ham-fisted sort of with the medium, and progressively getting more and more sort of ham-fisted with watercolor. But I love there's so much grace and subtlety to the color choices and the way he puts things in, and then the lighting choices he does in such an elegant and simple manner. Color and lighting decisions he makes, that at the time I hadn't really seen anybody do anything with watercolor. So I was like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out how to do this, and then, basically be devoted to that the rest of my life.
We got some questions coming in, so I'm just going to try and go in order.
There was one really good one, by the way, from Apple earlier that I thought would be a fun one to kind of chat about.
Sure,
because I know they are not the only one that feels this way or has felt this way, and that they asked if that Stan, first, I guess I should say, they mentioned that, Stan, you were a big inspiration to them getting back into drawing cartoons, and they were worried that they were too old to get started, which I think everybody has felt that at some point.
Mhm. They could start at any time. I mean, I'll be 73 in just a few days, and I'm still working. Sergio, I just talked to Sergio today, and yeah, he's, how old is he? 84, I think, and he's still putting out Gru and Mad Magazine as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Keeps you young, right? You know, I always say, do what you love. You don't work a day in your life, right?
I think it's the Gandalf thing, right? Like, you can only choose what you can do with the time you have left. If you're already regretting that you haven't gotten started, think of how you're going to feel a week from now or a month from now. Like,
Oh yeah.
you could be getting started right now, instead of lamenting that you didn't get started 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago or even one day ago. Like, just start. And whatever time you have left, that's what you get to draw in. And just do your best to use that time wisely, to whether it's drawing for recreation or drawing as a career. I don't know that you have to. I think the only thing is that there is a little bit of a chasing opportunity that takes some energy. That feels more like a young person's game. and dealing with some of the nonsense when you have to, whether it's with publishers or printers or whoever, there's some of that the older I'm getting, the more it feels like, can I just draw? I don't want to have to deal with this nonsense.
I mean,
and the convention travel and stuff like that. Like that can weigh on you the older you get, but I don't think any of it is prohibitive where now you can't, like, oh, sorry, you have to be this young to ride this ride. There's none of that.
And amen to that. And just to kind of piggyback off that, like I often say this, like, the creative journey doesn't need to be an isolating experience. Like, really talk to your peers, talk to people who inspire you, talk to people you want to collaborate with. Like, they inspire you, they lift you up, right? I think again, I've said in previous streams that, like, I've become a better writer because Jared's inspired me, and we've collaborated in a way where we've just pushed each other to tell the best story possible. And so if you feel like you're starting out too late, trying to get other people your brain trust, get that creative circle going, have them inspire you and motivate you.
Also, I think don't put pressure on yourself. I've talked about this on my streams before, so people who've watched my streams, forgive me for repeating it, but I think, like, if you went to a guitar store and bought a guitar and started noodling around and trying to figure out how to play it, you're not going to feel guilty. Like, this is a hobby that other people have, and none of your friends are going to look at you like, that's a weird choice. Why are you doing that? They're not going to give you grief. Like, what do you think you're going to do? Sell out a concert at Madison Square Garden? But if you go to an art supply store and you buy a bunch of art supplies and you sit down to start drawing, I think there is this expectation, like, well, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
You better find a way to make. Yeah, you better find a way to make money at it. You better open an Etsy store, or you better go get a comic publishing gig, or you better become an illustrator for children's books, or you better get your art hanging in a museum. Like, you can just do art because it's your release. It's your escape.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do, and it's just for you, and it's just about improving yourself and having that fun, that's okay. None of this has to have some end goal of, it has to become a career. It has to become a job. It has to become financially viable.
That is a thing now. It's wild. The side hustleification of everything. Like, my wife loves to knit and stuff. And when she's talking to people at work, it is always like, oh, well, you got to get on to Etsy. You got to do this stuff. And it's like, she's like, I just like watching TV and doing something with my hands. There's always this sort of discussion of, like, how do you make money though, baby? How do we,
and vice versa. Like, if you've got that drive, if you're like, yeah, I want to make this stuff and I'm going to turn it into a side hustle, and this is going to help pay for whatever it is, like new curtains for the bedroom, or you have a way you want to spend that money and you want to do all that, that's great too. Like I don't want to limit anyone, but it's okay to do something just because you enjoy it. If it's a creative release, you don't have to have the whole side career planned. So that might help with the age thing. If you're worried that you're starting too late, if you're just doing it to draw, that's also okay. And then all the pressure is off about I've started too late.
Yeah,
I
and
definitely
just
think you. Oh, go ahead. No.
no, go, Jerry. It's fine.
I definitely think with that said too, like you have to find, and I always go back to telling students, or if I ever talk like with kids or whatever, new artists, is like you have to find some kind of clean fuel to keep yourself supercharged, because it takes so much time and it takes so much effort. And I think it's a dangerous risk when you start exchanging money for it, because it changes the dynamic. It's less of the playground that it was, where you get to just sort of be free and have fun and express yourself, and it becomes a little bit of something different. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something different. And I know a lot of the people I started with, huge year, I know a lot of the people I started out with quit eventually, because it kind of chews you up from the inside out if you let it. If you get into the rat race of needing it to pay your bills, or needing it to to hit a certain mark, it can chew it up from the inside out, and then it's not your safe place anymore. So trying to find ways that you can maintain that safety in what you're doing and enjoy. Like for me, I do a lot of outdoor painting, plein air painting, and a lot of that is because I can draw with a pink highlighter, or like pick up a stick off the ground and smash the page or smear the paint, and I don't really have an expectation, or people sorry, probably right by the sharpener, but I don't have like people with an expectation that it needs to be a certain thing. I can do whatever I want with it. That plus like going to the museum or the library to look at the big large print versions of old painting, studying like fixating on a certain era or style of painting and studying it, for me is like a nice place that I can grow in, and also like get supercharged to go back and get excited about going back to my desk and drawing, so that I'm not just dependent on like, all right, well, we got to keep the lights on, so I got to make sure I'm doing this and this and stuff like that. I know the guy who, when I started out, I had a guy giving me advice who was an illustrator who was very accomplished and brilliant and so many more decades more talented, raw talent than I will ever dream to be. And he won't draw anymore. He won't even talk about it. Last time I talked to him, he's an incredibly nice guy. Last time I talked to him, he's like, I don't want to talk about drawing. And I've already gotten sick twice today thinking about it. So I don't want to draw anymore, and I don't want to talk about drawing anymore. And I think it was just sort of like the business of doing it for a living, and then the missed payments and your rent's due or whatever, and it's like all that stuff can chew you up. So take
I think that pressure, right, is that pressure gets
the pressure, right? And take a little bit of safe harbor in that, being new, no matter what age you are, and finding the things that make man, I would pay money to go back to having never seen a John Singer Sargent painting, or having no idea who like Thomas Eakins was, or Louis Trondheim or Cyril Pedrosa, and just to the experience of seeing Portugal from Cyril Pedrosa. The first time I got it, because I got the French version of it because it was just at CTN. Stuart and G had a little kiosk, and I picked up Portugal, where I still have it. It's also on the tenuous held together French section of my desk, but I got the French version of it. And Cyril Pedrosa's book, at the time they didn't have the English. Now you can get it in English, which you should. It's amazing. But at the time it was only in French, and I was able to read it without knowing any French, because the acting in it is so good. And I gotta get it. Why am I? The acting in it is so good.
Yeah, that's a must get, I think, for anyone who appreciates visual storytelling. Yeah.
The acting and color choices are so good. I have I think my other one is signed. I got one of them. He signed it and did a whole watercolor for me in it.
Wow.
Um,
Oh, lucky you.
uh,
Jeez.
yeah, he's so cool. I met him at SPX one year. Everything you'd hope meeting a hero. He was so like humble and kind and nice and talked to me for a long time. As I'm trying to like hold it together and mumbling and stuttering. But his color choices and the acting is so good that you don't need to speak the language, because the language is all in the acting and the color. And I mean, it's just phenomenal work. And he's since done a lot of other, Golden Age, Equinoxes. He's got a lot of Three Shadows, I think, First Second put out like.
Yeah, that
a number
book's
of years
great.
ago.
If anyone, yeah,
It's great if you need a good cry.
yeah. But also just like the storytelling aspect of it. And I
Yes,
think
yeah.
just to kind of piggyback off what everyone is saying, I think like the drive and the necessity to make it a business or, to be published. I think like if you just want to tell stories, then tell stories. And then if you
Yeah.
get success from telling stories, that's a great, result of wanting to tell stories. And I think that is a good way to have like a healthy drive about it, and just completing something, even if it doesn't see the light of day, is also just a great feeling to like, oh my God, I finished a story from end to end. And whether that is published or whether that becomes something else, I think completing something is like a great way to continue creating. And I kind of want to get onto the other questions. So I have a good segue here.
Also, real quick, you never know
Yeah.
like where it takes you. Like doing my book, Cody, was like writing a check I did not have the talent money for in the bank account at the time. And I really wanted to do something with watercolor, and I wanted to do something where I was putting together all the stuff I was studying with plein air painting, and I just did it. And then a publisher happened to take a chance on me, but everyone said no. Every other publisher said no. And then I made it through it, and I did it, and I got to do what I wanted to do in doing it. But that's how I ended up meeting Stan, and then all of that other stuff was because I just did it, and that's the big thing, I think, is just one of the harder skills is learning how to just finish a project. But I guess that's a whole other answer. We don't have to go.
Yeah, that turns into. I agree.
Be a whole other thing. But I just wanted to tie it back to meeting Stan and completing a project. And
there's a certain level
where
of
these
being
things can take
vulnerable
you.
throughout the process, right? And like letting yourself and your content, be witness to everyone, putting it out there and being okay with rejection and then getting accepted somewhere and then seeing where that blossoms into. Plus one to all that. I mean, I think we've all felt it in different capacities. And to kind of go into the next question, Tunes Track Art said, I think this applies to everyone. So I'm going to try and everyone I think should answer. How do you guys choose which story elements are absolutely necessary and which ones to shelve for now? And I think this could go for anyone, who's, we're all writers here and all creators here. David, I'm going to swing it to you. Like for Mouse Guard, such a long running series, right? Like how?
Real quick before you do that,
yeah.
I dropped it. I just want to say shout out to that question asker. He sent me a Yukichi that I
cool
and love, and I got it in a little case. Brilliantly talented illustrator. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, David, like, do you choose what you want to release? Like what's the intention behind it? I just kind of giving you prompts, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need especially when you're talking about episodic comics, you need to have an overall goal for the story. And that overall goal could be something simple like, hey, I have this world in my head and I want to create the best introduction to describe what it is without overwhelming the reader. But it also might be like, the intention of this story is that I want it to be a little darker and I want it to be very interpersonal and with a lot more character interaction, and I want it to be a passing of the torch kind of a story. Right? Like you have some goal for the overall story. And then you're kind of doing that again, issue by issue. What is the goal of this issue? And that doesn't necessarily mean what happens at the end. It's like, what are you trying to convey? What are you trying to communicate to the audience? And then as I'm working, what goes in or doesn't go in is all reflective of what's the best way to get that message that I'm trying to tell, whether it's for the whole series or for the issue, in. And sometimes there are things kind of like, punching the filing cabinet or having that ritual moment of cleansing yourself before entering the temple, that maybe isn't necessary, but it means a lot to you. Like it's just something that every time
Like that, yeah.
every time you feel like, oh, it doesn't have to be here. Maybe I should cut it because it would help me with the page count. If you're really passionate about it, it's okay to kind of question that and go, it doesn't have to serve the story. I think it's part of who I am as a storyteller to include things that aren't just mechanical storytelling elements.
Yeah.
Their flavor, their seasoning.
Jared and I had a lot of that throughout this whole entire series, right? Like filing cabinet, the cleansing. Like I think I was the one who was like, I really want them to cleanse, and how do we balance that? We only get 20 pages of real estate, and where do you push that? And I like what you said, like being passionate about something is a great influence to how we tell these stories, because I think that adds a little level of authenticity and charm to what we're, and I think it imbues why these are successes, right? We're making very intentional decisions to add to the story based on our sensibilities, our storytelling prowess, whatever, and a huge echo point to all of that, I'm just swinging over to Stan. Stan, you've mentioned where you want to take Usagi, right? How to conclude it. And actually, you're coming at it from a conclusion angle, right? I'm very curious on your perspectives here.
Usagi is a finite series. It has a definite beginning, a middle, and an end. Right now, it's going to take me another 10 years to reach that end, but I do have an end plotted out. And I don't think it's ever been done in comic books before, at least the way I picture it. So I'll leave you with that little intriguing bit of information.
If you, I want to know more, and you could say no, and I'm not going to answer. When did you decide how it was going to end? Did you wake up one morning and being like, I got it?
Oh yeah, that's a great question.
It's just a couple of years ago that I decided, I'm getting older, of course, and with Usagi it's pretty much a saga. It's always been a journey of one character, how he developed, as a kid, and then how he grows and how he matures and how he changes through his life. And just like I change as both a person and a cartoonist, I think Usagi's been changing too. And so for Usagi, I figured, where am I taking this? Is it just an ongoing series? And I have to say that even after I end it, there'll still be more stories, more Usagi stories, if not by myself, then by you and Jared or someone else. So and I may also do more Usagi stories, because I'm trying to tie up all my loose ends right now. People he's met a while back and then never showed up again. Yeah. There was a priest that showed that he appeared in one scene or one panel, and he just says, it's not time for us to meet, but we'll meet some other time. And this was 30 years ago. And so, I just introduced him in a story that hasn't been published yet. So, and things like that, just tying up loose ends, or characters that have intrigued some of the readers. I just want to tell their story and finish that up. So, awesome. But they'll still
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you're putting the conclusion of Usagi's story, but then there's still room to give different pieces of that journey,
exactly,
even though it's been finished. And I like this. I know the panel you're talking about, Stan. I remember reading that and then realizing, as you just said it, we've never, that's so cool that you've been holding on to that for 30 years. I'm so sorry. But that payoff is going to be so great. And just to have that level of care is so impressive. This is a 40-plus-year-old character. I get heady thinking about Jared and I had the distinct honor of being able to play in the sandbox, because you've just handled it with such grace and care. as a reader, like, you know, and a huge fan, like, I feel like I've grown with Usagi. I've seen his growth. And it's just cool to see that kind of play out and know that you have that kind of lasting endpoint that you want to be with the story. And I think, just to segue into like Jared and I's answer, I think that's like what's inspired us as we've created this, you know, first story arc with Kaito, where we want to take the characters and like what gets shelved, what can we use later on, you know. And to David's point, like what story do you want to tell, you know? What's the intent of this page? Jared and I are, I think you can call us neurotic. We talk about that page by page. Like, what is the intent of this page? And sometimes that page evolves after like Jared has like done the pencils, because we kind of lost the intent and we're like, okay, maybe we need to readjust this page, or the dialogue has to change because like it's getting a little bit hazy. And so I'm very blessed to like springboard all of that off Jared and be comfortable again and saying, hey, I'm losing what I was envisioning here. I see what you're doing. Let's talk it out. Right. Like, and it becomes this conversation of what we need to be conveyed to the reader, either via dialogue or visually. And so it's cool to hear that echoed, David, through you and through you, Stan, of like how this evolves and how you kind of push the characters, who you bring back from a panel 30 years ago, right? You know, or just what kind of gags and elements, you know, you want to put in the story but can't, right? It's not the right time. And Jared and I have a little list of things that we would love to take the story.
Sometimes there are ways of including that stuff just as like offhand casual mentions of things where you can still get the spirit of it across, but without having to do a full cut scene of whatever that moment is. You know, like I'm thinking of in Star Wars when in Empire Strikes Back, when Han talks about, you know, the bounty hunter that almost got him in Ord Mantell. And it's like, we don't need to see that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, also it would have been great to see that moment, but there's a way to put those kind of things in or reference them. And then because this is you know, depending on what your story is, this is a sequential storytelling thing, you can 3 issues later show that moment and actually expand on it. You always have to give the reader more than what they already know, though. That's like anytime you go back to a scene or show a prequel or anything like that, whether it's just more context or showing it from a perspective where the reader assumed something, but there's actually more depth to it. The good guy character didn't act as good as you thought they would have, or the bad guy wasn't as evil as you assumed, or just whatever. You have to add to it. You have to put more in there. But you can go back to it 3 issues later, 2 issues later. So if you are having a moment where something can't make it in the issue that you're working on, and really can't make it, and you're like, man, that's a good idea though, put it in that notebook for future use, whether it's 2 issues from now or even 1 issue from now. And figure out, is there a way that I can either cram this in just in dialogue, or a way that we can revisit it 1 issue or 30 years later, or anything in between.
And to that point, right, like, you know, if you keep thinking about it, right, like then there's like kind of a reason why you want it in there, right? I go back, I'm a huge Mel Brooks fan, and I think I've told this before in a live stream, so pardon me for repeating myself. When Mel Brooks was doing Young Frankenstein, which also is my favorite Mel Brooks movie, him and Gene Wilder were in disagreement on the putting on the Ritz scene. Like, Mel did not want it in the movie, and Gene did. And there's this, Mel Brooks has this famous story where he was really fighting Gene Wilder on this. Like I don't understand, like it makes sense. And he puts Gene Wilder through this whole like episode of just trying to defend the scene, and then finally Mel relents and was like, and Gene's like, why did you make me do that? He's like, well, I needed to know you really cared about wanting to put that gag in, like, because I didn't see it. And then to some people, that's one of the funniest scenes in the movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I always think of in court
Yeah,
with my
I
wife.
think Gene Wilder says this story in the documentary, which is quite lovely. I think it's on HBO Max too. But like, I feel like if Jared and I are talking about something and we can't quite fit it, and it's just nagging at you, right? Like you find the fun way to put it in there, right? You know, it's almost like a tall tale sign in a way to like make it work, because you're onto something. Yeah, whether it be an issue later, right, or 30 years later, right? So, cool. I got another question. I think we go down the list. This is for the artists. What is it like to draw variant covers for comics? I like seeing the different interpretations of Usagi. So yeah, I think David and Jared, this is a good question for you guys, like how you've approached your Usagi variants.
Jared, you want to start?
I mean, of course, it's so fun getting to do a variant and getting to kind of think about the character and you really just get to kind of play in the sandbox. You get to do all the fun stuff of like doing, thinking up a kind of a scene or a narrative or something that you want to do, and then also, getting to kind of execute it and the process whatever process you go through to kind of ideate and come up with stuff for it. So yeah, I mean, it's super fun. And I love every chance I get to do them. They're always super fun.
I got really spoiled actually on doing a bunch of covers for Stan. One of the best cover gigs I ever had was when I was doing the color reprints of classic stories.
Oh,
And the reason those were such a treat was everything was done for the interiors, other than the updated colors. But there were also color covers from the original run. So if there was a new character, I didn't have to just guess on some of the color palette or what made that character. But it meant that not only could I look at the whole issue's finished art and read the story and go, okay, I got a vibe here. I want to do my own thing, or I want to do something that's very much an homage to this scene or this panel. Or even I want to avoid what the cover was that Stan did back when it was printed in the 80s or 90s or whenever that issue was printed. It was such a treat to have that freedom, and beyond doing it, not just freedom, but like an archive, like a real ability to think about the variant cover and the structure of it. But also because those were arcs, like the kind of rule of thumb with those was first issue cover in a new arc, it has to be kind of hero shot of Usagi. You can't sell an issue 1 without the main character front and center looking cool. It can be moody, it can be more action packed, but you got to have Usagi right there. But then I could look at the rest of the issues and go, out of these 5 or 6 issues, which one is the one that I want to not have? Like, if I'm going to not put Usagi on the cover, if it's a villain cover or a sidekick cover, or Usagi can be small because it's more about the environment, But you can't do that on an issue 1, and you can't do that for every issue. But I could plan it all out. I could look at the whole run of that arc and go, here's going to be my hero shot. Here's my villain cover. Here's my dark and moody cover. Here's my environment cover. And it has ruined me when I get other cover gigs now, because
It's spoiled. Yeah.
Sometimes they give me almost nothing. And they're still fun to do, because usually when they give you nothing, they go, have fun with it. You can kind of do whatever you want. Like there's still freedom there. Yeah. But it was like really being given all the tools, all the materials, all the tools to build the best version of the thing. Yeah. And not have to make something up completely on your own. Even though that can be a lot of fun, it is a cover for somebody else. So you are always kind of in your head going, God, I hope they like this. I hope they like this. I hope they like this.
Well, you wowed us with yours.
I hope they like what I'm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Um,
Yeah, and this, I mean, you guys gave me the freedom to also go like,
Hmm.
here's the vibe we're going for, and we had talked about the
Yeah.
whether it was Miyazaki and all the anime
Yeah.
kind of influences, Tank Police and
It was fun to
Miyazaki
like
and
talk that out
Ranma.
with you. Yeah, and like kind of spitball like what direction you can go, right? And we were wondering after the conversation, like, we're because you again, like you said earlier, right? I want to do an arcade cabinet, but like I might come up with something better, and then you come with the arcade cabinet, and it was just so fantastic,
Well, thank you.
right? And kind of flip it to Stan. You know, you've done variants for Marvel. You know, like a Venom cover comes to mind.
Oh, by the way,
Like, what's
congrats in New York. By the way, we were able to get the Fantastic Four.
Oh yeah, we got the Fantastic Four short story. Yeah.
yeah. I wanna
We were
post
both
about that.
geeking
I
out
heard.
about that.
Yeah,
But like,
we were,
yeah, Stan, like the reverse on that, right? Like, what's been that process like? You know, kind
Well,
of approaching IP that way.
For me, I love seeing other people's interpretations of Usagi.
Mm.
And there's some favorites that came out that pops to mind, like Jared. I mean, Jared's done a whole bunch. So has David. And I love their work. And they have such a great take on Usagi. And Jared and David, and I've told David this before, whenever I see his artwork, I learn something. And that's very rare. And same with Jared. I mean, I don't do watercolors. I'm just self-taught. But looking at Jared's stuff, oh my gosh, his big brush strokes, and I can't do that. I just don't have the confidence in my watercolor techniques to be able to do that. David, I mean, his work, his line work especially, is just phenomenal. His character, his designs, and his devotion to the craft. I mean, David goes nuts. I mean, he creates 3D models
yeah.
of buildings and things. It's just mind-blowing.
Oh, David's
I don't
getting
know- I
something.
don't-
He's getting something. So.
I don't.
Oh, here's a 3D model. For Stan and Jared, you can't see because you're drawing, but David's
Yeah.
pulling out a
No,
3D
I
model.
can see it because but it's just look at that.
That's so crazy.
Well, thank you, Stan. I mean, my gosh. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm like a lifelong. Oh, that's awesome. Now I'm looking.
That is so.
That's
There's
so
a
cool.
bookcase, David.
Ah.
Like, this is so cool.
That's
Oh my
so
god!
cool.
Wow,
Wow.
that is so cool. I didn't know.
The walls are all magnetic, so they just snap back into place.
Oh, that's.
And
very
you
clever.
built that?
Yeah.
That's insane. I want the toy. Like little mouse guard action figures and like, oh my god, that's so cool.
Thanks for showing that, David. That is
I
David,
feel like I
that's
stare at David's trying to like figure it out. Like it's some sort of like I'm like, how do you do that? Because it's like a surgeon, like with the line quality. I feel the same way about Stan with the line quality, because I think I lean so heavily on the haphazardness of watercolor that I'm always like, man, I don't, because I came into comics wanting to do inking because I never thought I would get drafting up enough. I came from way behind on the drafting side of things. And so I just thought, well, okay, penciling is never going to happen for me, but maybe I could just hone the skill of inking and I can get good enough with like controlling a brush. And I have never been able to. I still can't hardly control a brush very well, but at least with watercolor, I can kind of, depending on how you look at it, kind of hide behind that. But it can be, with watercolor, it relies on a certain level of spontaneity, intentional or not. But I love looking at David's. I find David's work so mesmerizing. Mouse Guard and everything else he does. Just getting to look at the, especially the originals, and for me, just trying to dissect like how do you hatch like that, or like how do you? And
You
like,
just
to
sit
me,
there.
it's like
You just
how
sit
do
there for a long time with a pen.
Yeah, I know. And then to me, it's just like, how do you draw that like so much? Like it's so like, I don't know. I can't process information in that level of detail. I think
I think there's a grass is greener thing here going on, Jared, because
totally, I'm sure.
Yeah, because
Certainly for me. Like,
I don't, and like with the ink stuff and the detail, I have a hard time pulling back and knowing where to stop.
Mhm.
And part of that is because of how binary a pen line is. You put a line down, it's there, and the way it's supposed to scan is absolute black. And yes, when I go to digitally color it, I can do color holds and I can push things further into the background. But the nature of pencil and paint, you're able to push that depth instantly and just do subtle marks that become the implication of a building several blocks away, and then the building that's a little closer, you put some more detail in, but it's still kind of carved out of brush strokes. And then the one that the object that the character is standing right next to, that's supposed to be the most in focus, that's where you put your time and care, with the real details. And being able to do that is something that makes me jealous, because I can't just ink those. When I go to ink something lightly, like it's like, oh, that's a little out of focus, that's a little blurry, it always ends up looking like I scribbled it. And the only way I've found to kind of fix that, to make it still feel like there's depth in the inks in the original, is to go in with whiteout and essentially do a stipple pattern of whiteout over all the lines. So now it's like almost like a reverse halftone kind of screen on those lines, just to push them back and make it kind of read more like, hey, I meant to do this. I meant for it to look weird. Because if I just do it in regular ink, it looks like, did he fall asleep? He was drawing good, and then he started to doze off over here.
Yeah. As a reader,
it's so
David,
funny
I'm
'cause I
never
feel like-
thinking that, by the way.
That's because generally I fix those before they ever get published. But yeah, I can't do that soft depth that Jared can do. And I know Stan has a lighter inking style too. He can do those really confident, bold, almost woodcut looking lines for characters in the foreground, but stuff that's further off in the distance, he can just use a lighter hand and even maybe a little.
Actually, it's a newer pen.
Well, but I feel like sometimes there's even a little wobble to it, like you are holding the pen more loosely, or you're introducing almost like an atmospheric blur by that the line isn't going to be crisp and straight. It's going to have a little more wiggle to it. And whenever I do that, like I said, it looks like I fell asleep halfway through the process.
It feels like just a party trick to me. Like I feel I have spent so much time trying to refine from plein air painting, and then just looking at old paintings and trying to copy their, like Jean Leon Jerome or Sargent, like I was talking about, and trying to copy what they do with atmosphere and stuff to bring it into what I'm doing. Then a lot of times I feel like that stuff is, this is that, like you said, a grass is greener thing of looking at someone else's style and being like, man, I wish I could make environments like Stan does, and that just knock you out. And then to be able to do environments, rooms, and architecture, which obviously you've shown part of that secret is with the model.
Oh yeah.
But the architecture like you do, it's to me, I feel like I'm just sort of I'm doing a little card trick, you guys, 3 clubs, I don't know, to me it just feels so I'm astounded by you guys.
When I was in I started college at a community college that had a fantastic art department. And all of the professors were working artists. They were all members of local galleries, or showed in places, or sold their work at art fairs, things like that. They all were active. They were not just academics. And they all knew each other and were friends. And at different times, different ones had kind of taken the role of department head. And there were 2 that were very prominent kind of personalities. And one was a painting instructor named Tom, and then there was the printmaking instructor named Sam. And I remember some students kind of going almost like, you have to decide, you are either a Sam or a Tom. And it wasn't like we were choosing sides, like the 2 were at odds and we were going to, Jets and Sharks fight in the hallway, but we were just, it comes down to that. I think some of it's a mentality, and it for me now, it's almost broken down into kind of what Jared's even saying. Like you're looking at Singer Sargent, you're looking at light, you're looking at color, you're looking at these ways of expressing form and value and environment, all with these soft shapes that also have to do with hue.
Mhm.
And I'm
Yeah.
a line
Oh, yeah.
person, and it's with that printmaking background that, like, when you're etching into a plate, you have a little bit of control over how light or dark that line is going to print, but it's still going to print as a black line. It is going to print as some shade of gray, and it's very line focused. And there's also a lot of planning involved ahead of time. There isn't like just spontaneity, like, oh, I'm just gonna, you know what, I'm gonna just get this this etching plate out and I'm gonna just try some things. Like you have to know what you're doing 3 steps ahead of what you're doing. And that I think informed exactly, both it informed who I was an artist, and I took to printmaking because that's probably who I already was to some degree anyways, and it just reinforced. So
Like, so you think, like,
go ahead.
sorry, I'm just very fascinated by this. Sorry to jump in, David, but like that kind of like forged your kind of path of like how you your creative output, right? Like you have this. I didn't know you had this kind of printmaking kind of background, and I like, duh, like it makes sense.
I could
now.
see that, yeah.
Yeah, now that I look at your art,
woodcuts and etchings were that's what my degree in college was.
And from
where did you go? I'm out of curiosity.
Yeah. Actually,
I started at Mott Community College in Flint, Michigan, and then transferred to Eastern Michigan University to round out and actually get my degree.
Very cool.
Cool. And just going back to that, like, since that like is your kind of genesis of your art career, right? Does that influence the type of stories you want to tell? Like, did that heavily, like, because I have this background, it translated to Mouse Guard, and then that translated to something else, like, because you live in that world, that's how you've kind of like your genesis as a creator, I guess, you know.
I don't think the printmaking had anything to do with the kind of stories. I think that the only connection I can think of that becomes kind of thin is because printmaking is so much about process. There's so much about how did you get from point A to point B to point C. It's very labor intensive with all these kind of almost scientific steps, kind of like old school photography, like developing. Like there's chemistry involved, there's timing involved, there is some art involved, there's creative decision making, but it's a very technical kind of process. There's some of that in printmaking, or a lot of that in printmaking. And so knowing all the steps and also seeing somebody else's artwork and being able to kind of reverse dissect, you know, like during a critique, going like, wait, how did they get that? Oh, that they etched that before they etched that part. I see. My parents took me to a lot of historic villages, like you know, like Gettysburg and like living history museum kind of places where they were doing things the way that they did in the era that particular place is supposed to be embodying, and getting to see how things that we take for granted, simple things, whether it's carpentry or hauling something or making pot, you know, how do you store things in clay pots? How are clay pots made? Like this, how's clay? Where do you get clay? Do you go to the clay store? No, you get it out of the ground like this, and it also has to be like, you know, you have to get rid of all the impurities before it becomes pure clay, and like seeing all that kind of stuff and how it's done, I think kind of goes to the printmaking part, which definitely ties into what Mouse Guard is and the kind of stories I like to tell that have to do with world building and figuring out how do they do all these things? Whether it's about metallurgy or daily life stuff.
Honestly, that was a perfect answer. Like,
I now have 17 questions, by the way.
But only exactly 17.
All right.
So,
let's so we'll start this stream now, and no, I'm curious what came first in terms of and I guess this kind of goes for both Stan and you for Mouse Guard, is what came first for you, and I guess it's sort of a stylistic writing thing too, but was it the world building, or was it the kind of a specific piece of narrative that launched into world building? Like, because I know I love world building, and I think about it all the time. I can't sleep at night a lot of times, and I love coming up with whatever, maps or architecture, or looking at old, like, what did people dress like in Amsterdam in 1300s or whatever, and then like, how can I take this like interesting hat or this apron or this something, and like I love that side of things, and I spend a great deal of time thinking about, I guess, what you call world building, and as much as like Usagi, it's just sort of researching what was already there. But I'd be curious to know, for both of you, was it something, I know, like, Stan, you mentioned the samurai films, but was the world developing, or was it the story of Musashi that then sort of it started expanding like from there?
Yeah, well, I already had like a core. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
based upon feudal Japan and the culture and customs and folklore and everything. So I already had a great starting part. A lot of the groundwork had already been done for me. It's just deciding,
Oh yeah.
is Usagi a historical series or is it a fantasy series? Well, it's a rabbit, so of course it's fantasy, but it has a basis in real life Japan.
Yeah,
And
it's in textbooks.
mhm.
You know.
Yeah, it just kept building as I went along. What do I want to keep? What do I want to make up about my Japan or Usagi's Japan? And yeah, I've been having fun with it, and that's why I like to do stories about aspects of Japan, like doing things about pottery or even the
Oh
Jizo.
yeah.
Um,
Those are
especially if
some of
it's
my favorite.
newer things
Yes.
that I'd never heard of before. I just did a story about dodo dango, which is the art of Japanese mud ball making. And
Yeah.
that's
I've heard of
weird.
that.
So I'd never heard of that before. So of course I had to do a story about that.
Are you gonna try to make one in a
Yeah.
glass bottle?
Yeah.
And it looks like so much work. I saw someone do a video, and then I saw them actually starting to do it, and I was like, that's too much work.
Oh,
But
but it's funny,
is
on
nice.
top, yeah, on topic of this, like, that research is fun, right? To kind of
Yeah.
influence the story, you kind of get a prompt or a kind of a kernel of an idea, and then you're like, oh, like, I've learned something new, and I could see a story I can wrap around that, or
Yeah.
it's a thing, like, it's almost the MacGuffin that pushes the story in a way too, right? And
Mhm.
learned a lot of that recently, just working with Jared, of like, what are our influences, what could be future stories, just like looking into the future, like Googling like famous like murder mysteries in Japan,
Oh
like
yeah, that
real
was really
life.
fun.
Yeah, and I was talking to Jared. There's the demon with 21 faces. If you Google this unsolved murder actually not murder, extortion crime in Japan in the 80s, and they still haven't solved it, and it's bizarre, and it has the coolest name, like
Oh, I know.
and yeah, and so like what can you distill from like real life and kind of fictionalize but keep it authentic? And Stan, you straddle that perfectly, right?
Well, that's
Like,
been, not to bring it back to talking about myself, but that's been something really fun about. And then I want to hear David's answer too. But that's been something really fun about working on the Kaito books, is that we have been able to really meditate not just on like the kind of universe of Usagi, but then like, to me, I have really enjoyed, and then I've gotten a lot of people sending me emails and messages where they're just really thinking about like, oh wait, so then if this has happened and this society's like this, then like this part of history might have happened, or this might have happened, and what would that have been like, what would this have been like? And it's been really fun thinking about that, like if we've landed here in the 1980s and whatever, like references are in it, like the to Toriyama and the Gundam sort of reference in the other one, then like what other stuff, and like how else has this world sort of evolved from that turning point?
Well, something I've always really, really, really admired about Stan's body of work is how Usagi becomes the Usagi the book becomes a stage and proscenium where Stan can kind of put on any kind of play he wants. There are Usagi stories that are essentially just how-to manuals about a craft. There are ones that are tender. There are ones that are light and funny. There are ones that go all the way into like scary story, spooky horror. There are murder mysteries. and he can touch on top. I've talked about this with like every now and then where I'm worried I might be going a little too dark with something in Mouse Guard, or how do I frame that so that it's not too dark? And I'm like, Stan can get away with talking about, you know, women having children out of wedlock in a time where that's not allowed, and bastard children and infidelity and things like that in a book that doesn't seem like it deals with those topics at all. But Stan manages to walk that line perfectly and do not just those kind of dark topics, but everything else I've mentioned. It's like he can do anything in that place, and it's not just because of the framework. I think it's because of who he is as a storyteller that he knows how to walk that, so that it never feels like a deviation. It just feels like more.
Yes. Yeah.
A
Agreed.
lot of it has to do is because I own the IP, and my deal with all my publishers has always been whatever I send in, they publish. So they have no input as far as editorial input as far as story or art goes. So I can do any type of story I want. And
well, but there's a difference between being allowed to because a publisher will publish it or won't publish it, but also being able to as a creative, like actually creating that story so that it reads to an audience as not a departure, not a failure, not a like, what the hell is this? Where did this story turn left? And you always pull it off just expertly with
always grounded.
How broad you can go with all those different type of genres within genres, whether it's, you know, magic or real and gritty or just slice of life or love. It's you do it all, Stan.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and do it effortlessly too. Like, it's impressive.
It does take effort.
You make it look. You
do
make
it look
easy.
effortless.
I'm just like kind of like digesting what David's saying, and it's so true. Just like the genres and plays you kind of give us in this world, but the streamlined authenticity and journey of Usagi is
that's
grounded.
the core, I think,
and that's the core. And
We're
just like cavelling about you this entire time.
Suicide is also like, that's a touchy, dark topic, and like how do you put that in a book, especially when it's a book that's kind of been recommended as all ages, or even, you know, potentially for younger readers, and how do you do that sensitively? And Stan's had that in there where it's never been a gimmick, it's never been handled inappropriately.
Respectful,
it's respectful. It also fits the tone of whatever that story is, and whether it's suicide or murder or kidnapping or even domestic violence, like these are all really heavy, deep topics, and partly the way Stan draws, but partly also who he is as a storyteller. That is one of the things about Usagi that I'm the most blown away with, Stan, is how much you've been able to get away with.
That was good writing, David. I'm trying to
know. I had a quick question for David, which was just the follow up of that one, which is I'm just curious for Mouse Guard's sake. Like, was it the world building side of things, or did you start knowing you had this character and then it just sort of like expanded?
It was probably more, I guess if I had to categorize it, it'd be more world building. Some of it was about a situational world building, though. Like, these mice are low on the food chain. They're essentially a food to every other creature out there. Or if something else is a grain eater, they're in competition for the same grain source, and the other things are larger, bigger, stronger, faster. So then I came up with this idea of, like, there's this group called the Mouse Guard that patrol the open country between mouse settlements. So they're kind of these, like, almost like Tolkien's rangers, just patrolling. And so there's kind of story there. It's not just like, oh, here's a world. It's, I've got these kind of characters and what they could be getting up to, but there wasn't a specific story. And I think with that, all the themes of story come along, so it's more than just world building, but it's less than story.
That makes sense.
And I also came up with 3 of the main characters like real quick. Once I was like, oh, these Mice Rangers. I'm like, I'm going to base it on me and 2 of my friends, and that trio is going to be a really important part of the story. So those characters came quick, and that was because of I remember seeing a documentary on Jim Henson where Frank Oz talked about the Muppets and how characters don't work in a vacuum. It's more about how this character interacts with that character. So
That's
character
a really
A and
good-
character
yeah.
B are interacting, but the way character A interacts with character C is different, which makes character A now deeper than just a cliche.
Yeah.
And that they have to work within the context of all the other characters that they bounce off of. And I thought that sounds like a really tough writing assignment. I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to use all the character interactions that I already know, and I'm going to base these on my friends and I, and either whether it's who we really are or who we tend to play when we do role-playing games. Like when we play D&D and stuff. Like I know those conflicts where our characters both, want to kill the dragon or get the magic scroll or whatever it is, but we have different opinions on how to get there, and what those arguments end up being like in game and out of game. That's what I'll base the Mouse Guard characters on.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
I know we're nearing. I know we want to be
Yeah,
mindful
we
of
should-
time tonight.
I'm trying to be
yeah.
mindful of time tonight so we don't go on forever. So I'm gonna wrap up this drawing and then we can we'll call it a night. But if anybody needs to go like immediately, I've probably got like 2 minutes on this one, so we can start.
Okay. Oh,
If anybody has any last minute questions, by the way, before we call it a night, feel free to chime in.
Someone asked us. Kyle asked us. If the Kaito 84 series continues, do you think you'll stick with 84 or will it go to 85, 86, etc.?
Oh, that was a discussion. To me, it's more. I mean, I don't have a problem with things happening chronologically, but the things that we have written are not over like a full decade. They're sort of more immediate. So I don't know. That's something that we've sort of discussed and debated amongst ourselves and with Justin, who we've had fun discussions, just sort of chatting about like what we were thinking in terms of like scope wise of entering modernity, or if there's even a sort of room for some kind of an idea that is a spin-off that takes place even further in the future, like our era or something. So
Yeah, like modern day.
like a current day or something.
Yeah, it's been talked about, and Jared and I are, I think for folks who've listened, we've kind of have 20 issues in mind. So like, what does that look like sequentially if we get to
that's
tell that
wonderful.
story, right?
I did not know that. That's wonderful. I love
Yeah,
that.
we and really it's, I think, dependent on the fans, and hopefully you the book does well and we can tell more stories. But we've thought about the future. I'm still thinking about what Stan said, something that happens like way in the past and then like it pays off and continues on either in the 80s or later on, right? A great question too. A fan came up to us at Forbidden Planet and was like, are they going to stay in Japan? And I thought that was
right.
really
I've
cool,
thought
'cause,
about
like,
that
the
a lot too. 'Cause,
world
like,
is more open, right?
yeah,
in
they
the
can fly
80s.
take a plane or
And like,
what's
what's stopping it? More specifically,
go to China
it's like,
or
yeah,
whatever.
they were
you
like,
know?
can we go to Brazil? And I was like, that would be
Yeah.
rad. Like, I would love to go to Brazil and like figure out what that looks like. And so it just got me thinking of like, how do we, like, what's the liberty we have of opening up the world more, right? And so like the gears are turning there. So
Yeah, I mean, that also kind of piggybacking on what I said about Stan being able to do all these kind of different diverse stories, but also you guys kind of liking the idea of like specifically the tropes that you're using in this story or not tropes, but like influences.
Right.
But like if it's set in the 80s and you go somewhere other than Japan, like now you can start playing with Romancing the Stone, Indiana Jones style.
you're drinking my cup of tea. Yeah.
You know, you can get into all these other kind of genres of stories, all these different kinds of stories.
Yeah.
Wow,
I'm geeking out already.
Are you sure it's only 20 issues total? I think
We can push.
I think that number just got bumped up a lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
David, you can pitch the Brazil series. There you go.
Oh, great.
I want capoeira mice. I'm gonna throw that in the ring for David.
Well, hey everyone, thanks for again joining us today, and for Stan and David gracing us with their Friday evening and afternoon.
Yeah, seriously,
you guys are
thank
the
you
best.
so much.
Yeah, thank you
Um,
Well,
guys.
thank you. Oh, I'd like to plug one thing.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I think next month we're doing a Kickstarter, starting a
Oh.
Kickstarter.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
I remember this at
definitely
San
hear more.
Diego, right? This was mentioned. Is
Yeah,
it
we've
that?
never done this before, but it's going to be the art of Stan Sakai.
Oh,
And
cool.
Oh,
But I'm not sure exactly what the timeline is. But I think we're doing it next month in June sometime. So keep a lookout on that for that.
you heard it here, folks. First, you heard it here
Awesome.
first, folks. That's awesome, Stan. I'm already pledged. I'm going to pledge right now, even though it's
Yeah.
online.
Yeah, whenever.
I pledge to
Yeah, to the great Usagi channel.
to back that project as soon as
Yeah.
it's available.
Yeah, that's
Thanks for
super exciting.
announcing
I
that,
can't
Stan.
wait.
Yeah, that sounds super
thank
exciting. As I have, it's all art books behind me. Like it's just a
Oh,
full
yeah.
wall. So that's just another one that's going to grace my wonderful collection. So
And I guess Kaito number 4 comes out next month as well. And it concludes at San Diego Con. Is that right?
yeah. Well, the
Yes,
final issue will
that's
come
very
out San Diego
exciting.
Comic Con week, issue
Oh,
5.
wow.
So,
Wonderful.
which a good way to kind of end cap it's when we
Very
announced it,
exciting.
right?
It's been really fun seeing like people speculating, and I've been getting a lot of emails of people speculating like where the story's going to go and like what it's been a surprise. So I'm there's a lot I can't say that we're sort of keeping the cards close to the chest in terms of what happens and where they go. I'm particularly excited about the next issue because we get to really explore a lot, both with the characters and then just with the world building type of stuff, because we
Mhm.
got to do a whole lot of research and a whole lot of stuff on where they go. But I don't want
Yeah,
to
what's
give
behind it.
too much away. But I'm excited for people to see that and see their sort of character dynamic evolve.
So that you heard all the hints here first, everyone. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you next time. And
Thank you.
It's been a blast.
great working with you
Yeah,
guys.
thank you. And thank you all for having me, not just tonight, but having me do a variant cover.
Yes.
It was
oh
an
yeah.
honor,
Well, obviously, yeah.
I mean,
just what an honor.
anytime Stan asks, it's pretty much going to be a yeah.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
The fact that extended to this project as well was a delight for me.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, David.
Well, I mean, you're definitely first choice. Anytime I get a chance, you'll always be a first choice for me. So, all right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. I'm trying to scoot over here to the computer so I can control this thing. But thank you everyone so much for watching, and I'll save the recording. And then I can save it on YouTube. Also, I think Facebook saves it, or Instagram too.
Yeah.
So it'll be there in case you missed it or are coming in really late. It'll be around. So thanks for watching and thanks for hanging out with us. And have a great night.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.